At first glance, you might assume that this structure before you is some kind of modern bunker, or perhaps a military fortification left over from the World Wars. This monument lies in Samangan Province, Afghanistan, about 3 kilometers southwest of the city. But the very fact that this massive structure is carved directly from the bedrock of the plateau, that alone changes the equation entirely. Well then, we are standing before an underground archaeological monument, one that has puzzled explorers and historians alike. So, what does this structure truly represent? The official archaeological narratives have yet to settle on any definitive conclusion regarding this monument. The most widespread account tells us that it is in fact a Buddhist religious stupa, dating back some 1500 years, carved during the 4th or 5th century AD. Few realize that Afghanistan was once a center of Buddhist teachings, a result of migrations flowing from India into this region. Thus, scholars believe this dome to be a striking example of that history. And yet, the deeper we delve into the details of these accounts, the more those stories begin to sound completely illogical. For this structure does not resemble Buddhist stupas in any way. Buddhist stupas were religious buildings erected above ground, using tightly packed rows of clay or stone blocks, then coated with a layer of lime, and afterward adorned with carvings and paintings. Here, however, the entire site has been hewn directly into the heart of the rocky plateau, not merely a shallow cavity. Nowhere else in Afghanistan, nor anywhere else, do we find stupas carved underground in this manner, let alone fashioned from a single solid mass of stone. It is as though those who built it intended for it to be impregnable against some extraordinary force, and the tools they employed shaped the rock, as though they were working pliable clay with remarkable ease. Here we are speaking of a massive circular pit, descending to a depth of about 8 meters, with a domed block of stone rising precisely at its center. As you descend into it, you cannot help but feel as though you are entering a heavily fortified bunker. Why, then, was it constructed in this way? The traditional explanations revolve around protection from Afghanistan's scorching sun, and perhaps even camouflage against invaders. Naturally, such explanations seem utterly absurd and unconvincing. Otherwise, we would have found dozens of similar structures scattered across Afghanistan, complete with inscriptions and everyday artifacts to justify such a belief. The second opinion is that it is known as Takht-e-Rustam, which in Persian means the throne of Rustam. The name is attributed to a legendary historic commander, regarded as one of the great heroes of antiquity. Yet, strangely enough, it does not resemble a throne or royal seat at all. From above, it looks more like a modern bunker, or a military stronghold encircled by a deep moat designed for ultimate defense. Still, in my research, I found the name Rustam mentioned twice in the history of this region. The first Rustam Farrukhzad, one of the greatest generals of the Sasanian Persian Empire, born into an aristocratic family, renowned for his wisdom and formidable military expertise. Yet, as we know, he suffered a crushing defeat at the Battle of Al-Qadisiyah in 636 AD, where he and most of his commanders were killed. And since he belonged to a period far too recent in history, I do not believe he bears any true connection to this monument. As for the second Rostam, son of Zal, son of Sam, he is one of the greatest heroes of Persian mythology, a central figure in the legendary epic, the Shahnameh. He is famed for undertaking the 7 mythical labors, the kind we often encounter in tales of superhuman heroes. These are a series of adventures he embarks upon to rescue King Kavus, himself a legendary monarch. The labors include battles against monsters, dragons, and sorceresses. In short, if this second Rustam is a mythical figure, then to the Persians he resembles Hercules and his exploits in Greek lore. If, on the other hand, he was a real historical figure, he would be closer to Antara ibn Shaddad in the pre-Islamic Arab tradition. In any case, it is impossible to determine with certainty whether he was real or not. For this reason, I turned to research into the history of this site, beginning from prehistoric times, as far back as 4000 BC, and I found a multitude of cultures and states that succeeded one another upon this land. From the ancient agricultural communities in the valleys of Helmand and Kandahar, to the rise of the great civilizations and empires before the Common Era, to the Islamic conquests and the later dominions of Turks and Mongols, all the way to the modern state we see today. Every one of these eras has left behind its distinctive traces in architecture, in agriculture, in tools, and even in tombs. Their locations can be identified with ease, but none of these characteristics apply in any way to this structure. Moreover, the monument bears no royal inscriptions, nor any symbolic carvings that might connect it to ancient kings or epic traditions. Yes, some Buddhist motifs were found upon the ceiling of one chamber, but the majority of the inner rooms are devoid of ornament. And yes, a number of gold coins were also discovered, belonging to the Ghaznavid dynasty, a power that once ruled vast territories and extended its influence deep into India. Yet these decorations and the presence of those coins represent only later additions, not elements original to the monument itself. They are the result of successive civilizations reusing the structure, each in its own way. Thus, I find it perplexing to attribute this site to any single historical commander, or even to regard it as merely a Buddhist sanctuary. This complex is unique, not only within Afghanistan's archaeological record, but its very characteristics render it strange and unsettling, even when compared across the global timeline of human cultures. Both its unusual design and its inexplicable carving tell an entirely different story. The most striking feature: the structure is carved from a single solid mass of stone. The entire complex is hewn directly from one block of rock, without any assembled pieces, without any joints, without mortar binding separate parts. Added to this is the flawless geometric symmetry, revealing a deep understanding of proportions, something impossible to achieve without precise prior planning. The walls of the surrounding trench contain 5 carved caves and a number of small chambers, all with smooth, polished surfaces. Some of these chambers have ceilings with small circular openings, allowing for controlled entry of daylight and ventilation. The trench around the structure is extremely deep and narrow, sufficient to act as a defensive barrier, making access to the central mass extremely difficult, except through a designated passage. This is, above all, a defensive design, one that makes its protection far easier. For that reason, such a design strongly suggests a fortress or a highly fortified refuge in some astonishing geological observations. Observations that may reveal much about the origin of this structure. Researchers have noted the presence of clear erosion patterns upon the stones forming the walls. The outer surfaces of the monument, as well as portions of the surrounding trench, bear smooth, rounded features that resemble the wear caused by water. These marks upon the rock instantly call to mind the erosion traces upon the Sphinx in Egypt. For such marks to appear, it would require rainfall over hundreds, if not thousands of years, falling consistently and at high rates, or perhaps the passage of violent floods. Yet, the climate of the region is generally arid. Annual rainfall there does not exceed 1 to 400 millimeters. Nor do great floods pass through this land, save for the occasional small torrent. Such rates are, of course, entirely insufficient to produce this kind of erosion upon stone. So does this observation point to the possibility that this structure once witnessed the pluvial age, perhaps some 10,000 years ago? What reinforces this hypothesis is the discovery of an ingenious drainage system carved into the rock, designed to divert waters that might collect around the structure. This feature is integrated into the design, not added afterward. It shows that the builders were aware of this problem and crafted the monument to include a clever mechanism for channeling rain and floodwaters, keeping the structure safe. This also confirms that the builders erected it at a time when this region received extremely high rainfall, making such a design absolutely necessary. All of this was executed through complex, premeditated planning, revealing an advanced level of engineering knowledge, architectural skill, and mastery of water management. The perfect circular form of the complex attests to superior engineering abilities and long-term planning, and yet the complete absence of inscriptions, construction marks, or contemporary records, marks that might firmly anchor it to its alleged origin in the 4th or 5th century CE as a Buddhist monument, remains striking. If we imagine the degree of pre-planning required to conceive such a structure, the immense labor demanded to carve it from stone, the removal of thousands of tons of debris, all while maintaining extraordinary precision of proportion, alongside the evidence of water erosion and the presence of an innovative drainage system, features that may date it to before the pluvial age, then it becomes difficult, if not impossible, to attribute this monument to any known civilization, even when tracing back as far as 4,000 years before Christ. What if this monument predates all the states and civilizations known to us, those extending back some 6,000 years? In that case, such an assumption would appear far more reasonable. For under that possibility, it may well belong to those inexplicable structures that belong to a darker, more enigmatic age of history, an age in which humankind carved colossal monuments, structures that defy justification, not for pride, but for survival, as if they were preparing for some impending catastrophe, traces of which we have witnessed across many regions of the earth. Only if we broaden the map of inquiry, then this monument would no longer stand alone in its mystery. For northward, in Russia, lie several sites equally strange, their only explanation being that they belong to civilizations of prehistory. The mysterious Hora column, plunging deep into the solid mountains to tremendous depths, stretching for hundreds of meters. The gornayashoria wall, known as the Wall of the Giants, with an immense size, thickness, and height so colossal that we cannot even begin to imagine the purpose behind its construction. And passing by the enigmatic arkaim structure, which has bewildered archaeologists, astronomers, and physicists alike. Such sites can only be interpreted as fortified shelters, carved into the depths of the earth and the heart of solid mountains. In the east, we find the Longyou caves in eastern China, massive, multi-chambered caverns, long and sprawling, stretching deep underground. Those who created these caves removed millions of tons of rock and debris, employing an advanced excavation technology unknown to us today. But the most striking example is what we see at Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. Vast cities and monumental settlements, carved beneath the earth and stretching for hundreds of kilometers. Scholars have unanimously agreed that the builders of this monument deliberately and systematically buried it under stone as a means of protection. Then, They moved into the subterranean cities they had carved into the ground. You will find detailed references to these sites in the description box. But protection from what? What was it they feared so greatly that they chose to live beneath the earth for such extended periods of time? Scientists have recently realized that the end of the last ice age was not a quiet one, unlike the hundreds of glacial cycles that had passed over Earth. This time, the ending was violent, so violent that it affected every civilization, leaving its destructive marks in every corner of the world. These events have been scientifically termed the youngerdryas. It was an era when the world endured a cataclysm. Floods and volcanoes, earthquakes and solar storms, meteors and asteroids, not to mention hurricanes and tempests that left no place on Earth untouched, reshaping its very face. And though all civilizations of the world, without exception, spoke of these events, what matters to us are the scientific findings which point to the sequence of catastrophes that followed this great cataclysm. For this reason, I urge you to watch this video, which lays out the scientific evidence behind these events. Events which scholars determined lasted for nearly 1,300 years. Imagine 13 centuries of relentless turmoil, blizzards striking suddenly, freezing everything in mere seconds, floods rising overnight to staggering heights, sweeping away entire cities into the depths of the oceans. The surface of the earth had become uninhabitable. Humanity had to find solutions to ensure survival. And just like Göbekli Tepe and its vast underground cities, what if the design of the Afghan monument, carved into the rocky plateau, was in fact the reason it survived ancient floods and cataclysms? Some have speculated that Takht-e-Rustam may have been a refuge from prehistoric deluges, resembling a colossal stone vessel on land, built to withstand the floods. According to this view, the solid stone walls of the structure were capable of keeping the waters at bay, functioning as a giant shelter. With sandstone porosity taken into account, and walls as thick as 8 meters, the monument could withstand floods lasting as long as 8 continuous days, long enough for floodwaters to subside in a mountainous region. And since the structure lies at an altitude of 1,000 meters above today's sea level, it stands as a strategic refuge from the floods that rapidly overwhelm the plains. A true capsule of survival for those caught by the deluge in this isolated mountainous region. If this idea seems strange, we must think of it in connection with other similar sites scattered all across the globe. Sites whose designs are equally mysterious. Colossal in size, walls of inexplicable thickness, no carvings, no decorations, nothing that can be tied to any known culture, and requiring architectural knowledge and complex engineering equipment far beyond what we can imagine any of the civilizations we know had at their disposal. In that case, this site may be just one among many that still stand as silent witnesses to an ancient civilization, a civilization that once inhabited the earth long ago, possessing a level of science and technology perhaps greater than what we have achieved today. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Share with us your thoughts about this site, and follow us as we continue to uncover the secrets of history in upcoming episodes. Until we meet again.